The hand part is like an obvious, like, well, duh, my hands need to be able to play faster. But it's also a mental thing. So if like you try and mentally practice and like use high verisimilitude, which means like very lifelike visualization of something, if you go with that with your playing and you like mentally vision yourself playing through this, then it can actually like show some gains. Like there's been some research on this, which by the way, I have a PhD in music education, so I'm super nerdy about like research side of things. So I do actually know some things sometimes, but there has been some research on mental practice and imagery. It's about 80% as effective as actually physically practicing. And the mental practice makes it so you can actually practice more than you can physically. So like when I was in class, I would actually be, instead of paying attention, I would be drumming in my head. Using that mental practice made it so I could get in more hours than my peers, which again is why I was able to progress faster than people around me, because I was finding ways to not only practice physically with sticks, but I was actually able to practice outside of rehearsal. Moeller technique, rather than only using wrist or only using like finger French, etc., use a little bit of arm. So you're okay with like this like whipping motion where you like almost initiate from the elbow and then you follow through, so it goes up and then whoosh, into the note like this. So if you're playing like an accent tap, this is a very exaggerated version of it, but when you're doing it faster, you're gonna see a lot of people on drum kit in particular do this, where you have that little bit of a whip in there. If you're using finger, you can't really play slow and controlled or low and controlled as well as you can if you wrist it. So like if you just do this, got that scope glare on that shaved head. This is the 5/4 VK shopping spree. This play along can go as slow as 20 beats a minute, or as fast as 160. And there are thousands more at the link on the screen. I was focusing on trying to make it so that the flams were still vibrating on the low notes. So I want the sticks to like kind of tickle my hands a little bit while I'm playing. So there's a video on my website that kind of talks about this more. And so it talks about the difference between what it sounds like when you're playing relaxed versus when you're playing tight. You can hear like an audible hum as opposed to no hum with that. No matter how slow or fast you're going, you should still feel like a little bit of vibration to give that space for the stick to move around in your hand. You don't want it to like death grip it while you're doing this. A lot of the mistakes that I witnessed when I was teaching drumline had to do with the mind more so than the hands. Really focus on like attention training and just kind of building your focus. And so there's a lot of ways that you can do that. I personally practice a lot of different meditation variations that focus on attention. Like I listen to the heartbeat and I feel it from here into my wrist, the timing difference of it. That for me is very calming. And if meditation is not your thing, practice with the drumline where we would like face a busy street or somewhere where people are going to be distracting. So intentionally ask them to focus on a single point off in the distance and ignore all the other distractions. The set game where you would stand one-on-one in front of each other and you'd go to set, and the first person to smile or to break their set would lose. And you'd kind of like do that with each member of the drumline, while the other members of the drumline are kind of like around is like being goofy and whatnot. And so that is another way that you can really try and focus your attention. Back when I used to tour in drum corps, we would do just like silly stuff on the bus, like let's see who can do the longest roll. So I ended up doing a roll for the entire season, the first season of the Chappelle Show. It was fun. The things you do when you're bored in drum corps while riding on a bus all day. As somebody who has taught every single grade, kindergarten through doctoral student, I have to say that making content online is significantly harder than any of those grade levels in person, because you don't have that opportunity to just like, hey, how did that work for you? Do you understand that? Etc. That back and forth. I honestly kind of like the challenge of like figuring out different ways to teach. Like it was something that I had to do when I was working with students one-on-one. Is like if I had 30 kids in the class, I'd find 30 different ways to try and like help them so that we can meet their needs, their interests, etc. But when it's like thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people potentially watching your content, it's a lot harder to do that, and you're not gonna please everyone, that's for sure. Everybody's got their own opinion that is right for them, and they'll let you know in the comments. I would actually practice in class without actually moving my hands or drumming, and it looked like I was paying attention, but really I was just in my head playing through shopping sprees or whatever, and just like refining my technique that way. So that's another way that you can get more reps in without actually having to have sticks in your hand. Normally with grid, you would have a stationary rudiment, but this variation puts the rudiment on the accents, and it's actually the backwards version of grid, so it's going 1, 2, 4 instead of 4, 2, 1. But this is a fun way that you can just kind of like work on different variations of a rudiment on an accent. At the end of these streams, I like to chop out, so I just like to play something fast. Why? Because it's fun. Also, it pushes your brain and hands to play a little bit faster, and I save it to the end to have an enjoyable time at the end to make it so next time I'm like, oh, I want to drum again. Check. Off the left. Flam drags and float flam drags. Off the left. Yes, if you like that chop exercise, there are a bunch more on my website at jaredoleary.com/drum, as well as a bunch of drum set stuff and 500 plus grid variations, some lessons, and some technique exercises, so check it out. The reason why these play-alongs go from 40 to 41, 42, as opposed to sitting at 40 like 5 times in a row and then jumping up by 5s or 10s, etc., is because you want to try and make sure that there are no gray areas when you are playing, any gaps between different BPMs. So if you're jumping up by 10s every single time you play, you might have like a gap in your technique where like you shift from a slower technique to a faster technique, and it's going to sound wonky. By going up by 1s, this is a great way to kind of prevent that. So this was something that I learned from Jeff Queen, who's a 4-time world champion snare drummer. Diddle and tap grid variations are a fun way that you can work on accent tap patterns that are useful for show music or exercises with diddles on taps. These play-alongs and hundreds more, which are found in the link on the screen, can go as slow as 20 beats a minute all the way up to 200. So check out the timestamps in each one of these play-alongs to jump to a specific BPM to be able to practice fast or slow. And if you enjoy the free content I create, all I ask is that you share it with somebody else. It just helps more people find it.